The fall of the angels, Lucifer, the Watchers, and the origin of evil. O seekers of knowledge, you who crave to unveil the secrets of the cosmos. Welcome to God's Lore Deep Dive, the place where we don't just recount myths, but delve into the hidden philosophical, psychological, and theological layers of meaning. Today, we embark on the most perilous journey, seeking the origin of evil, not in common darkness, but right within the very light of the heavens. No tragedy is as profound, horrifying, and persistent as the tragedy of free will. This supreme power, the invaluable gift bestowed by the Creator upon his messengers of light, is paradoxically the source of all sin and collapse. We often consider sin to be a human failing, a weakness of the flesh, yet the harsh truth was etched across the heavens. Before mankind could commit the first sin, before Adam and Eve reached for the forbidden fruit, there was a betrayal, an eternal blemish that stained the heavens, and it is the story of those who were dissatisfied with the perfection granted to them, those who craved power and possession to the extent that they were willing to trade eternity for a moment of depravity. This is not just an epic, but a psychoanalysis of the fallen angels, aiming to query why a creature created in perfection could choose the path of destruction. The history of the fall is not a singular tragedy, but a two-act epic, a philosophical dichotomy on the nature of the devil, a war of ideas within the heart of perfection. First is the tragedy of Lucifer, the one born of light, who fell due to intellectual arrogance, due to the self-esteem that wanted to be God, leading to his exile to become Satan, the adversary. Second is the catastrophe of the 200 Watchers, the Grigori, the angels who fell due to mundane lust, due to the base envy of desiring intercourse with humankind, not only defiling the flesh but also corrupting the human soul with forbidden knowledge. Thus are the fall of Satan, the rebel who wanted to replace God, and the sin of the 200 Watchers, the debauchers who wanted to imitate man in lowliness, two sides of the same great rebellion, the rejection of their divine order and their original nature. This decoding journey will lead us deep into the forgotten texts, those excluded from the Bible, yet which hold the key to the deepest origins of the devil. If we only read the accepted biblical texts, we see only gaps and unanswered questions. What is the nature of the fallen angels? How truly severe was their sin to warrant eternal punishment? To answer, we must turn to the apocryphal texts, those commentaries rejected by the early church because their content was too terrifying and shocking. Among them, the first Book of Enoch serves as a historical landmark, a brilliant and dangerous source. This text was rejected not because it was false, but because it was too potent and controversial. It dared to place the origin of sin on the shoulders of the angels, absolving humankind of the responsibility of being the first cause of evil. This shook the very foundation of the Adam and Eve doctrine, a risk too great for the early churches. Yet, the fact that the Epistle of Jude in the New Testament directly quotes Enoch is an irreparable tear in the wall of biblical classification. It proves, the story of the Watchers is not folklore, but an indispensable part of early Jewish and Christian theology. The existence of these hidden myths is the reason God's Lore Deep Dive exists. If you are one who does not shy away from difficult truths, who does not fear digging into forbidden legends, then do not hesitate to click the subscribe button now, like this video, and share it with other seekers of knowledge. Your interaction will ensure that this torch of knowledge never extinguishes. The Book of Enoch tells of the mystical Enoch, who walked with God, and he was no more, for God took him. He was not a typical prophet, but a cosmic witness, one who entered heaven to see the truth, and returned to record it, making him the tragic bridge between sanctity and corruption. It was he who recorded the tragedy of the Watchers, the Grigori. The term Watcher, Grigori, is not a random rank. They were angels tasked with guarding and influencing humanity. The close proximity to man caused their spiritual erosion. Angels are spiritual entities, while humans are a mixture of spirit and flesh. The free interaction in this golden era led the Watchers to be trapped in a philosophical envy of man's finitude and capacity for procreation. They saw reproduction not as a biological function, but as a forbidden act of creation unavailable to them. The craving for intercourse was not mere base lust, but an attempt to experience existence in the mortal way, an astonishing self-abasement, a disdain for their own divine nature. On the sacred Mount Hermon, the intersection between heaven and earth, a covenant of betrayal was made. Under the leadership of Semyaza, 200 watchers gathered. Semyaza confessed his fear. I fear that you will not consent to do this deed, and I alone shall bear the punishment for this great sin. This fear was not regret, but an anxiety over the solitude of punishment. He organized a collective oath, binding each other with an eternal curse, aiming to distribute the sin. The 200 watchers chose the comfort of the crowd over the solitude of faith, abandoning their individual identity to merge into a single, depraved will, creating another collective original sin. Before we delve into the terrifying judgment, where the archangels Michael and Gabriel re-establish order with fire and chains, I invite you to pause. After hearing about the sin of the watchers, who do you believe is most culpable? Azazel, the bearer of forbidden knowledge, or Semyaza, the organizer of the covenant? Comment your opinion below to help God's Lord Deep Dive decode this tragedy, and continue to support the channel by subscribing if you haven't already. Even after the judgment was complete, a mystery remained, one greater than the Great Flood. Why did God permit the existence of the devil after the cleansing? If the goal was to purify the world, why did he leave behind the seeds of destruction? The answer lies in a divine compromise, a covenant of patience and trial, recorded in detail in the Book of Jubilees. After the Great Flood receded, as Noah and his descendants began to re-establish civilization, the devils, the spirits of the Nephilim, arose, continuing to lead the new generation onto the path of corruption. Noah, in his despair and fear, pleaded with God to bind all the devils, permanently sealing this threat. His plea was the cry of humanity against the injustice of evil. But then, a dark entity intervened. Mastema, also identified as the Prince of Hostility, confirmed by the Book of Jubilees to be Satan. He performed a bold act, bargaining with God. Mastema did not ask for forgiveness, but for authority. He argued that if all the devils were bound, he would be unable to exercise his will over mankind, because human wickedness was so great that a force was needed to fuel temptation, to lead them into depravity before the day of judgment. God accepted this horrifying proposal. He allowed Mastema to keep 1/10, 10%, of the devils under his dominion. This compromise solves a great mystery. Satan and the devils are not merely enemies, they are tools of trial. The existence of the remaining 10% of devils is proof that God established a new covenant with Satan. The devil is permitted to exist to torment and tempt, but within God's controllable limits. The Book of Watchers explicitly states, "The spirits of the giants shall rise up against mankind because they went out from them. They shall destroy without being punished, until the great day of judgment." This established a theological system in which torment is not God's failure, but an essential part of mankind's great test. This trial was perfectly illustrated through the tragedy of Job. This story is not just a myth, it is a theological treatise on justice. The wager between God and Satan was not meaningless cruelty, but a confirmation of the value of righteousness when tested to the extreme. Satan was granted absolute power over Job's possessions and family, yet was limited from killing him. Job, who lost everything from his children and wealth to his health, maintained his reverence for God, and thereby proved the superiority of unconditional loyalty even when faced with absurd suffering. Job's tragedy teaches us that the presence of evil is necessary to verify the true worth of good. If life were easy and without temptation, would faith still hold value? However, the question of the origin of the fall cannot be completed if we do not return to the first tragedy, the tragedy of Lucifer, the light-bearer, the tragedy of primal pride. Before diving into the shocking comparison between Lucifer and Mastema, comment below right now. In your opinion, which prophecy of the fallen angel is most horrifying, the fall of the 200 watchers due to carnal lust, or the fall of Lucifer due to pride? Share your thoughts so God's Lore Deep Dive can continue to uncover these secrets. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you are engaged in this journey. Lucifer was not just an angel, but the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect beauty, covered with precious stones. He was an anointed cherub, a near supreme position in the heavenly hierarchy. His sin was not an action, but a thought. He told himself, "I will ascend to heaven, I will set my throne above the stars of God. I will make myself like the Most High." This is the absolute philosophical sin, seeking to abolish the difference between the created being and the Creator. It was not a physical rebellion, but a pure conscious rebellion, the greatest form of self-exaltation. Theological texts present two completely different narratives on the mechanism of Lucifer/Satan's fall, both related to envy of humankind. 1. The Islamic and Jewish version, Iblis and Adam. This is a grand drama of power hierarchy. When Allah, God, created Adam and breathed life into him, he commanded all angels to bow before Adam, viewing man as the supreme creation. Iblis, Satan, refused, based on the arrogant argument, "You created me from fire, and him from clay." Iblis fell not because he hated God, but because he hated man. He could not accept that a lowlier entity, clay, was placed higher than a pure entity, fire/light, like himself. This fall was an envy of humanity's status and blessing. 2. The ancient Christian version, Genesis B. and John Milton. This version depicts Lucifer as a general eternally shackled in hell. According to the ancient Genesis B text, Lucifer was bound by iron chains and unable to move. This creates a theological dichotomy. The tempter of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden was not Satan, but a substitute fallen angel he sent. Satan, the king of hell, is an imprisoned king, only able to enact destruction through his proxies. This implies that the devil has a hierarchy and operates through proxies of sin in the world. However, whether an imprisoned king or one who bargains with God, the nature of Lucifer/Satan remains purposeful rebellion. He is the archetype of pride, while the Watchers are the archetype of weakness and lust. Both waves of the fall created their legacy. Lucifer created eternal trial, the tempter of mankind, and the Watchers created the tools of torment, the devils from the Nephilim. And that is when we must face the final question: what is the lasting significance of these tragedies? He is the archetype of pride, while the Watchers are the archetype of weakness and lust. Both waves of the fall created their legacy. Lucifer created eternal trial, the tempter of mankind, and the Watchers created the tools of torment, the devils from the Nephilim. And that is when we must face the final question: what is the lasting significance of these tragedies? The answer to the central question we posed, whether the fall of Lucifer and the Watchers were two sides of the same rebellion, has become clear. They are not two separate stories. They are the co-manifestation of a single truth, a perfect dichotomy in the nature of evil. The fall of the angels was not the end, but the beginning of every test of human faith. Lucifer failed on the highest plane, intellect and will. He sought to shatter the order of creation. The Watchers failed on the lowest plane, emotion and instinct. They sought to shatter the boundary between the divine and the mortal. Both rejected their divine nature and their granted position. Lucifer's pride created the theory of sin, the Watchers' lust created the practice of sin. The Nephilim and the devils are the physical evidence of this dual failure, the final products of both forbidden knowledge and misguided instinct. The legacy of the fallen angels is the very hell we must endure in this life. They sinned out of pride and lust, and their consequences, the demons, are the eternal reminder that we must always face those two temptations within our own souls. Mastema/Satan is permitted to exist to torment us, but that torment has a supreme purpose: to force humanity to consciously exercise its free will. Every time we resist a temptation, we are not just fighting the devil. We are asserting the supremacy of the human will over the very angels who fell. Humans, created from clay, are granted the mission to redeem the errors of the beings of light. Furthermore, the apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and the Book of Jubilees, though rejected, serve as eternal warnings. They were buried by those in authority not because they were false, but because they contained a truth too heavy: even perfection can fall. The recovery and study of these texts, once again, is the recovery of the full context of the spiritual war. We cannot fully understand why God had to create the Great Flood without knowing about the horror of the Nephilim, and we cannot grasp the role of Satan without knowing about the bargain of Mastema. The entire epic of the fallen angels concludes with a tragic philosophical reversal. The tormentor is also the tool used for purification. The devil exists to challenge, and through that challenge, humanity achieves higher righteousness. We are granted the power to fight against the very legacy of those who fell. This is the ultimate resolution of original sin. The angels fell because they possessed free will, and humans are empowered to use that will better, with humility and conscious awareness. Therefore, O companions on God's lore deep dive, this is where we conclude this grand thesis. We have gone through over 30,000 words, delving into legends that were seemingly erased. The truth is, they persist and continue to challenge human faith. You have spent hours exploring secrets that powers desire to hide, and that proves the torch of knowledge within you is unquenchable. Before concluding, I want to pose an open question that leaves the strongest impression. If you were granted absolute wisdom and power, would you possess the humility never to commit the sin of Lucifer or the folly of the Watchers? Comment your answer below, sharing how you believe humanity can triumph over the curse and legacy of the fallen angels. This profound participation will ensure that God's lore deep dive can continue to undertake other deep dives. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so now, and like this video if you feel the content has expanded the boundaries of knowledge. Thank you for journeying with me in this tragic search for truth. I am Storyteller's Name, Placeholder, and I will see you in the next unveiling of secrets.